So I am now with Denham Richards, who is an actor, and he now lives in Botswana. Denham, tell me more about the show you're currently on.
So a television series called Yellowstone. We've been doing this show for it's like 6 years already, so we're in the middle of our season 5. It's the #1 show. It's been the #1 show for the last 3 years. We're averaging 16.2 million views per episode. We have tremendous fans that have really embraced the Western world. And then on the other side of the world, I live in the country of Botswana, where I have a television and film studio called Kumo Studios, and we do original programming, and then we also do capacity building. So we teach on the business of entertainment and go around the continent and teach the public and the private sector about how entertainment makes money, how it can positively impact GDP for the country, and then also the most important thing, which is solve unemployment, because the entertainment industry is the only sector in the world that can actually employ all sectors. So that's something that is really near and dear for us.
That's really phenomenal. So you were telling me that you grew up in LA and then you moved to Botswana. So your lens is really interesting because you grew up in the West and you know now you're there and you're almost an ambassador for both parts of the world. And how do you find that? Like, tell me, what are some of the biggest misconceptions Westerners have of Africa and Africans have of the West?
Oh, you know, the most of the Western kind of lens is, you know, it's been a lot of marketing, you know, that's not necessarily positive about the continent, which is very unfortunate. And that's something that for myself, it was like, look, I'm just gonna go. And so I moved to the continent 3 years ago and found out that it was not anything like any place, right, that they were telling me that it was going to be. Everybody's impoverished and there's a whole bunch of kids that are malnourished. And of course, like, there's bad places, there's not decent places everywhere in the world, right? Like, we have certain places even in Los Angeles, right, that are not the most desirable things that I don't think people would want 50 years of marketing for that. So I would say for the Western side, it's about how do I make it more accessible, right? How do I make the continent be kind of like live up to what the potential is, because it is, it's tremendous. And I would say for the continent, it's this thought process that in order to be successful, you have to go to the West or you have to get to Europe, right? And that's also a misconception, right? So for me, my biggest mandate more than anything is about making sure that we're empowering Africans to be able to have the opportunities, right? So we have this, which is here, we're at the Unstoppable Africa type of event, and it's about how do we then not just talk about it, but actually have actionable items, right? So for us, you know, the population of Africa is the youngest continent in the world. There's a tremendous amount of youth, and they want action. You know, they see what opportunities can be, and they want to be a part of that. So what are we doing on the everyday to make sure, outside of something like this, which feels good, when we have to actually apply these things on Monday, what are we going to be doing?
And what are you doing?
Yeah, so one of my biggest things is we do a lot of capacity building. We have a program called Kumo Masters, where we travel all around the continent and we teach about the business of entertainment, and then we help build the entertainment sectors, because the entertainment sector is the only industry in the world, right, that can actually engage all the sectors, right? There's accountants, there's lawyers, there's bankers, there's janitors, it's every, you know, agriculture, right? And you don't have to have a college degree. So now there's no kind of like this, oh, you have to be super educated or you have to have this type of form, right, in order to be engaged in it. So for us, that's a great swing that we can use, so we can change the way that we're starting to create people from being maybe in a lower income to a middle income, and then later on down the road be in those upper echelons of financial opportunities. But then more than anything, teach them how to build businesses. So we're creating these incubation centers all over the continent to be able to help engage, where they can just come and get free internet and then get certified through the company that we're working with, right, to make sure that we can then bring them opportunities and they can have that, right? So it's that digital upskilling and those types of things, but we're doing it through the entertainment lens.
I mean, that's huge. The digital transformation is one of the main themes of this conference. But I love that you're taking a very holistic approach to how you're actually going into the continent. What has surprised you most from, you know, you say you travel all across Africa with these masterclasses. What surprised you about the people you've met or the opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, so I'm like a social anthropologist, right? So like that's really at the core of what I do. That's what I do. And one of the things I notice is that everybody wants to work. Everybody wants to be a part of what the future is. but what are we doing right now that's giving them that feeling like we're gonna do more than just have a conversation, right? I'm gonna get motivated and you're gonna get me all excited, and then does that translate into something tangible, right? And that's something that is more important than anything, right? I was just in Malawi a couple weeks ago, and you notice the tremendous amount of opportunities, but how do you begin to unlock these opportunities, right? So now it becomes about the public sector has an agenda, the private sector has an agenda. So for me, I really approach it from the lens of entrepreneurship, because that's an opportunity where the government doesn't have to undergird because they have so many other things that they have to deal with, right? And certain banking institutions and things like that, they have their own personal mandates. So if we can empower entrepreneurs, right, and teach what is entrepreneurship really at its core, what does that mean, right? It's solving a need and being able to fill that need. So that becomes our approach that we're using at Kumo. My personal approach is that the way to solve unemployment, the way to kind of change the narrative of Africa is more entrepreneurship, but also more entertainment.
And yeah, I mean, there's so many great minds. So you kept talking about concrete things. So tell me concretely, what do you want to see happen from now until the next Gabi conference is a year? What do you want to see happen at the next Gabi conference?
Well, we shouldn't be talking about the same things we were talking about this year, right? And so it's like, if we're still going to be talking about the same things and we haven't done anything, and then it turns into a conversation, and the population has had enough of that. So what would be great is to be able to say at the opening of next year's conference, here are the key points that we talked about last year, and here's us checking those things off because this is what we did, right? And even for me, I'm very aggressive when it comes to the continent because we have tremendous opportunities, and the whole world is looking at Africa, right? And we're not only not going to disappoint, but we're going to over-deliver on what those promises are, but Africans have to be a part of that. And for too long, everybody's been looking about how we can get into Africa, but the money doesn't stay in Africa. The money gets out. So it becomes come in, mine it, and then leave and go somewhere else to build up all these other countries. And then the people are left with what? And so for me, there is no winning if Africa is not winning, right? And so there's a lot of money to be made. So for me, I really am very, very big about actionable items, holding people accountable. And look, if you're at this conference, you're blessed enough to be here as part of the UN week and all these other things, but if you're not delivering on your promises, you shouldn't get access to come back to these places, right? And that has to be this is a reward to be able to be in these places and like that. But if you're gonna be a speaker, you're gonna be in these public places saying that this is what you're doing, then we need to know year to year, right? We need to know that that's what you're doing. If not, you don't get to have access.
Wow, no, you're absolutely right. And you've got to practice what you preach, which you do.
Very big
so
on
let
that.
me ask you my last question. You're an actor, right? And you have a big presence here in the US, as you just said. So how is that when you're a role model? You're a role model here too. And what do you find that, that people obviously look up to you? So what do you keep in mind of the values you kind of want to impart in the role that you have?
You know, my heart and soul is the continent, right? I'm a son of the soil, right? So I've been very blessed, to be an artist here in the US. And so I really want to use that platform for the empowerment, right? And like I said, because Africa is the youngest continent in the world, there's a lot of opportunities. And so one of the ways that I want to do this, I'm always going to be big about empowerment, but because my whole focus is on the continent, it becomes about how can we take the right now in Africa, there's a intellectual opportunity to exchange through that, right? How do we do this business exchange? How do we do all these different exchanges so we can teach and learn? Africa they're highly intelligent individuals, right? But you just don't know what you don't know. They don't always have access to certain things. So for me, it's on one side in the US, it's about continuously kind of ringing the bell for what opportunities are and that self-motivation. I wrote a book a couple years ago called Mastering Your Mind, right? Which is about holding yourself accountable for the things that are going on. And then over there on the continent, it's about really rolling your sleeves up, right? And making sure that it sounds very, very cliche, like being the change you want to see, right? But it is that. And so hopefully the more that I speak, the more that I'll be held accountable. And that's why I do it. So I become very, very verbal so that people have things like this and they can say, hey, Denham, you know what? A year ago, I saw you were doing this. What have you done since then? And that's great for me. So the more vocal I become, the more accountable I ultimately will become, and the harder that I will work.
I love that. It's a great philosophy. What is your message to the young people? Let's close out on that. Your message to the young people watching this in Africa right now.
We see you. And, there are some of us that are coming to these places that are thinking about you, right? That you are the filter, right, in these conversations. Oftentimes you get a lot of people that are highly successful in all their careers and they get together and they talk, right, but they're not necessarily talking with everybody else that's not at that table in mind. And so I'm a person that I live with on the continent, right? And I'm around everybody every single day. And these are the people that run things. These are the people that are voting. These are the people that can vote with their dollars. And so what I would say is continue to learn about the things that you want to do, and also make sure that you hold the people that are kind of speaking to you, I guess, in the more diplomatic way, vote with your dollars, right? It's more than just going to a booth and punching a ticket, but it's about what you decide to engage in. And the more that you engage, the more things will be able to change. And if I get to be a part of that, then that's a tremendous blessing as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.